My mom has high hopes for me to succeed. I was the so-called gifted prodigy she shaped with 600 slaps. If I skipped piano practice, I got slapped. If I went out to play, I got slapped. Emma was the only light in those dark years. But for the sake of my bright future, my mom ruthlessly broke us apart, like tearing apart two young lovers with a stick. Later, I got accepted into the Central Conservatory of Music and scored first place in the country. My mom was overjoyed and waited eagerly for me to win a prize at an international competition. Just as my therapist urged me to say no and avoid the international competition, I still signed up without hesitation because on the list of contestants, I saw Emma's name. I was extremely anxious, wondering what I should say to her when we met. But before I could figure that out, Emma showed up, and with her was her boyfriend, Michael. Michael laughed and asked, "Who's that? Your ex?" Emma just shook her head faintly. She said, "No, how could I ever like a freak like that?" So before the competition, when a reporter held a microphone to my mouth and asked if I had anything to say to my mom, right in front of tens of thousands of viewers, with my mother staring at me full of expectation, I laughed and coldly spat out a few words. She's a murderer. Chapter 1. My mom didn't have much education herself, but she wanted me to become an artist. That year, Lang Lang, the famous piano superstar, had just won a major award. Countless parents across the country were fired up, and somehow my mom became one of them. It all started when my music teacher taught me a few simple songs, and then told my mom in awe, "This child is a genius." I've thought about that line countless times. I think the teacher just meant it as a kind, encouraging compliment, but my mom took it too far. She went crazy over it. She had just been about to divorce my dad, who'd lost his job, but that one sentence made her stay. She said, "Mom is betting her whole life on you. If you fail, you'll be letting everyone down." At 5 years old, I was lifted onto the piano bench and made to start practicing. She taped a terrifying schedule above my bed, modeled after Lang Lang's own practice routine she found online. She said I started later than others, so I had to work twice as hard. If Lang Lang practiced 6 hours a day, I had to do 12. Only that way could I become twice as brilliant. I had school during the day, so at night, I wasn't allowed to sleep until I finished my hours. The piano clanged through the night, and neighbors would come and complain. "Sandra, you may not need sleep, but we do." My mom ignored them. The elderly woman upstairs banged the pipes every time she heard me practicing at night, loud urgent thuds that messed up my rhythm. The next day, my mom threw a dead rat upstairs. The old lady's grandson screamed in terror, and my mom shouted, "You old hag, try messing with Daniel's future again, and I'll go to war with you." I heard her yelling at the door for 10 minutes. When she came back, she sat next to the piano bench with a coat hanger in her hand. She said, "Mom's taken care of all the distractions. If you still can't play well, then it's your own fault." I looked at the hanger in her hand and nearly burst into tears. Chapter 2. Learning piano meant regular beatings. Play a wrong note, get hit. Doze off, get hit. Sometimes it was her hand, sometimes a clothes hanger. It all depended on her mood. Afterward, she'd cry and say, "I'm already being so good to you." When we were young, we got beaten worse, and we weren't even allowed to eat after. "I'm hitting you to make you successful. It hurts me more than it hurts you. You think I enjoy beating you?" One day, my piano teacher noticed the bruises on my hand. She asked what happened, and I whispered the truth. She frowned and stayed silent for a long time. I really liked that teacher. She was gentle and beautiful. She lived alone after a divorce and said her daughter, a few years older than me, lived with her ex in Shanghai. She asked how long I practiced piano each day. When my mom came to pick me up, the teacher gently said, "Daniel's mother, no matter what, corporal punishment is never good. And Daniel's only 5 that he needs proper sleep to grow." My mom didn't say anything at the time, but she never took me back to that teacher's house again. That day, as she pulled me away, she muttered loud enough for the teacher to hear, "No wonder her husband divorced her. She doesn't know how to raise kids." Chapter 3. Mom said that only family truly wishes the best for you, so I shouldn't listen to what outsiders say. At 11, I was admitted to the affiliated middle school of the Central Conservatory of Music, and a highly respected master broke the rules to accept me as their last disciple. The news shocked our small town, and reporters swarmed our home, beaming with pride. My mom stood before them and shared her parenting wisdom. "I told our Daniel the piano is your life. If you stop practicing, you might as well die. My discipline is very strict. One time Daniel played the same wrong note 3 times. I slapped him, and on the 4th try, he finally got it right. Kids need to be hit. They don't know what's right until they've felt pain. It's okay if he hates me now. When he grows up, he'll thank me. All the newspapers were filled with interviews of my mom. The headlines were striking. The child prodigy created by 600 slaps. Many parents envied my mother and came to our home to learn from her. But not everyone agreed. Someone asked, "Isn't this too harsh on a child?" That person was immediately ridiculed by others. "That's why your kid will never get in, obviously." I went to Beijing, and my mom had my dad sell our old home so she could move with me and rent a place near school. Dad stayed behind, sending money on time. On the first day of school, after the principal gave his speech, he asked if any parents had something to share. My mom raised her hand high and took the mic from the host. Our Daniel is the youngest student in this class and also the one who started learning piano the latest, but I guarantee the school he will be the hardest working. One day he'll become the next Lang Lang. No, he'll surpass Lang Lang. All the students looked at me, and I was mortified. I tugged on my mom's sleeve and said quietly, "Please don't say that. Everyone here is talented." My mom got upset. She said loudly, "Then all the more reason to take them as your goal so you can surpass them." From that day on, no one really wanted to play with me. It was hard for me to fit in. The TV shows they talked about, I hadn't seen. The games they played, I'd never touched. I had nothing to say in any of their conversations. All my time was spent practicing piano. When my mom found out I had no friends, she was pleased. She said, "Geniuses are always lonely." At school, I did everything alone. Ate by myself, studied by myself. Everyone knew I was top of the class in piano, but they also all thought I was a freak. This went on for a whole year, and then the school doctor diagnosed me with depression. At first, my mom didn't understand. She said, "When we were kids, we had nothing, and we still grew up just fine. Daniel's got food, clothes, the best school. What does he have to be depressed about?" Later, maybe after hearing something outside, my mom came home happy. She said, "This is a disease that only artists get. It means you're a true artist. Depression brings deeper inspiration." She picked up the clothes hanger and supervised my practice for the new day. But that day, I didn't practice. I ran away. I climbed to the empty rooftop of the school. It was so high that the wind on the 20th floor was terrifying, as if one careless step could blow me away. I stood at the edge and looked down. A voice inside me screamed, "Jump. If you jump, she'll regret everything." Chapter 4. But just as I stood at the edge of the rooftop fence, trying to summon the courage to climb over, a voice called out from behind, "Daniel." I turned around and saw a slim girl. She was wearing a white dress, standing in the wind. The breeze blew the hem of her skirt and her bangs aside, revealing a pair of clear, bright eyes. I asked, "Do you know me?" She smiled gently and said, "How could I not? You're top of the class." Her name was Emma. She went to the same school as me and was also studying piano. She asked, "What are you doing up here on the rooftop?" I didn't know how to answer, so I asked back, "What about you?" She said, "To photograph the fire cloud sunset." She pointed to the edge of the sky and said, "This spot has the best view." Only then did I notice she had a camera with her. I quickly thought of an excuse and said, "I'm here to see the fire clouds too." So that evening, we sat shoulder to shoulder on the rooftop, watching the golden sunset slowly melt into the clouds. Emma's profile in the twilight looked almost dreamlike in its beauty. We talked a lot. Emma said, "I never expected someone like you would come up here to watch the sunset. You don't seem interested in anything besides piano." I looked down and replied, "My mom says nothing else matters except practicing." Emma widened her eyes and said, "That's not true. There are so many meaningful things in life." I asked, "Like what?" She rested her chin on one hand and said, "Like having a delicious dinner, taking a hot shower, watching a movie with someone you like, going ice skating, watching the sunrise and sunset." That was the first time anyone had ever spoken to me like that. That day, I got home late and received the worst beating I'd ever had. My mom lashed me with a hanger while screaming like a maniac. She said I'd been out goofing off for 2 whole hours, while other kids were studying or practicing, so I had already fallen behind. She had no idea I wasn't out having fun. I had been out trying to die. Coincidentally, my dad came to visit that day. He tried to stop her and reason with her, but my mom shouted hysterically, "You're a useless failure, trying to ruin your own child too." My dad fell silent. He sighed, backed away, and drank alone in the corner, letting my mom discipline me however she wanted. When it came to raising me, my mom had absolute authority. After all, she'd been in the newspapers, and everyone said that without those 600 slaps, there would be no Daniel today. That day ended with me being banned from dinner and forced to practice 4 extra hours of piano. As I sat down at the bench, my mom stood beside me panting and barking. "Didn't you say all the time you wanted to die? Then go ahead and die. But as long as you're alive, you practice." Just as I was about to lift the piano lid, my hand paused slightly. I looked up at her, eyes wide. She snapped, "What are you staring at?" I clenched my teeth and said, "You read my diary." In that diary, I wrote nearly every day about wanting to die. She pointed the hanger at me and said, "Is that any way to talk to your mother? What do you mean read your diary? You think I wanted to read your crap? I read it because I'm responsible for you. Now stop talking and start practicing." She saw what I wrote, but she didn't believe I'd actually do it. I heard her say to Dad, "Kids always like to indulge in melodramatic whining. Daniel just wrote it to get my attention. He thinks he can threaten me that it won't work. If he's really got the guts, let him drink poison. I'll drink it with him." That night, I lay in bed, body covered in bruises, unable to sleep, while that conversation echoed from the next room. But I didn't want to die anymore, because Emma said she'd wait for me the next day to watch the fire cloud sunset. Chapter 5. I looked forward to seeing Emma. Back then, I didn't even know what puppy love really meant. I just knew I liked Emma the same way I liked the night sky after a rainstorm, the way a kitten licked my fingers, and the cold beads of condensation on a can of cola fresh from the fridge. Those were some of the very few moments in my life when I truly felt happiness. Whenever Emma turned back to smile at me under a sky ablaze with sunset clouds, my entire world would suddenly feel brighter. Emma always complained that I never stayed long. Pouting, "You've only been here 20 minutes. She looked at me and asked, "Can't you stay a little longer?" She didn't know that those extra 20 minutes each day were already something I had fought tooth and nail to get. I told my mom that the school's performance showcase was coming up, and the teacher had kept me back to discuss which piece I should perform. I had barely ever lied in my life, so when I said that, my legs were trembling so hard it felt like they were about to cramp. But my mom didn't notice. She snorted from her nose and said, "You can do the performance, but don't let it interfere with what really matters." She looked at me and said, "You do know what really matters, right?" I muttered like a mosquito, "Being number one." She frowned and said louder. I shouted, "Being number one." At last, my mom nodded in satisfaction. She said, "Good, that you know." So when Emma asked me why I looked so stressed, I hesitated for a long time and finally told her the truth. "I'm scared I won't get first place." Emma looked puzzled, tilting her head. She said, "But you're already amazing." I gave a bitter smile and shook my head. Emma wouldn't understand. She was a kid from a middle-class family. Studying music was just a personal interest for her. It wasn't like me, carrying my whole family's hopes of climbing the social ladder and making a name for ourselves. I didn't know how to explain it to her, so I made a joke instead. I laughed and said, "Look, the reason you even noticed me is because I'm top of the class, right?" Emma chuckled softly. She said in a gentle voice, "That was a lie. I remembered you because I was curious about you. I kept seeing you always by yourself and thought you were really cold. But then one day it rained hard, and I saw you building a shelter for a stray kitten. That made me curious about what you were thinking. It was only later that I found out you were the top student in your grade. So you see, it's not being excellent that makes someone likable." She looked into my eyes and said, "I like you. It has nothing to do with whether you're number one." That was the first time in my life anyone had ever told me they liked me, and that sentence broke down every wall I had. I froze on the spot, not responding for so long that Emma's face turned red. She bit her lip and said, "Did I say something wrong?" "No," I said as I hugged Emma. "Thank you, Emma. I like you too." I thought that was the moment light finally broke into my life, but I later realized it was actually the last beautiful moment I'd ever have. The next day, in my second class, the homeroom teacher walked in. In front of everyone, she gestured for the math teacher to pause, and then called me out. "Daniel, go to the principal's office." Confused, I asked what for. The teacher's face gave nothing away. She said, "You'll know when you get there." The principal's office was 3 floors up. With every step I took, my legs trembled harder. A nameless dread knotted at my chest, making my whole body shake. And when I knocked, called out "excuse me," and pushed open the door to the principal's office, all my worst fears came true. Because sitting in the office chair was the principal, and across from him on the couch was my mother. Chapter 6. The reason everything fell apart was actually very simple. I used the school's performance showcase as an excuse because my mom would only approve of anything related to piano. But I forgot she was someone utterly obsessed with vanity. While Emma and I were watching the fiery clouds on the rooftop, my mom made a phone call to my homeroom teacher. She asked whether I would be the closing act at the performance showcase and expressed her hope that the school could reserve a few front-row tickets for her. She wanted to invite some relatives and friends to watch me perform, and even suggested that it would be ideal if she could be given a chance to speak on stage as a model parent. I completely understood my mom's thinking. Bringing relatives to my school to see me perform, then standing on stage to give a speech as the proud mother of a star student. This would give those relatives stories to take back to our hometown, tales that would surely grow more embellished with each retelling. By then, the legend surrounding her would only grow stronger. What I didn't know, what I never even imagined, was that she would bypass me entirely and call my teacher directly. So when she raised all her requests, she was met with the teacher's confused, "What performance showcase?" My mom was furious. Her son, who she had raised for over a decade, had lied to her for the first time. She came storming to the school, searched for me everywhere, and eventually found me. But I don't know what kind of malice overtook her, because at that moment, she suddenly calmed down. She didn't jump out and confront. She didn't jump out and confront me. Instead, she took out her phone and, using the camera function she'd just learned recently, snapped a photo of what she saw. Years later, when I think back on it, I realize it was actually a beautiful photo. Under the golden cloud-streaked sky, a boy and a girl in school uniforms quietly embraced. But standing in the principal's office, watching as my mom placed her phone on the desk and the photo filled the screen, I felt all the blood rush to my head. My face burned like it was on fire, and yet my whole body felt frozen cold. "Principal," my mom began in a composed and steady voice. After years of media interviews, she had acquired a certain demeanor of someone who'd seen the world. When she spoke in public now, she no longer resembled an uneducated rural woman, but rather a refined and proud intellectual mother. For instance, in that moment, she looked at the principal and said, "Our David is a gifted child who's even been on the news. I trusted in your school's values and discipline. That's why I sent him here. But what has your school done? I saw with my own eyes a female student seducing my son. My child is simple and honest. Aside from practicing piano, he doesn't understand anything. He's been taken advantage of and doesn't even realize it." The more she spoke, the more agitated she became. That outer shell of elegance began to crack, and her crude, true nature spewed forth with her spit as she ranted through the office. "My son has never lied once in his life. He's been ruined by this little tramp." The principal tried to calm her while calling in Willow's homeroom teacher. He asked, "This girl is in your class, right? Bring her here." In that instant, I could only hear the screaming inside my own mind. I rushed forward, hoarse and desperate. "Don't bring her. She has nothing to do with this, Mom. It's all my fault. I won't lie again. I promise I'll practice piano seriously from now on." But it was useless. I suddenly realized the more I begged her, the angrier she became. By the time Willow was finally brought in by her teacher, my mom charged at her, raising her hand. She summoned all her strength and slapped Willow hard across the face. She screamed hysterically, "Do you even know what shame is at your age? Seducing boys already that you're a disgrace. Is this how your mother raised you? Say something." Willow fell to the floor, clutching her cheek. The teacher stepped in, trying to hold my mom back. I dove to Willow's side, frantically trying to help her up. The entire room was in chaos. No one had remembered to close the office door, and it happened to be the end of the second class period. The hallway outside filled with students and teachers, and a crowd gathered at the doorway, countless eyes watching the outrageous spectacle unfold inside. Chapter 7. I couldn't care about anything else anymore. I helped Willow up, stammering, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." But Willow didn't seem to hear my apology. She looked at me with a strange expression I had never seen before, and then her lips moved. What she said came out stiffly, mechanically. My heart sank like a stone. The office suddenly fell into complete silence. Willow said, I think. I can't hear anymore. That slap my mom gave her had been too hard that Willow had lost hearing in her right ear. Outside the hospital, the teachers held me back as I stood far away, watching Willow's parents arguing with my mom. Outside the ward, my mom was standing stiffly, her neck craned forward as she shouted at the top of her lungs, screaming and cursing. Go ahead, sue me if you dare. Go on, see if I care. I'm not afraid. I'm already in my 40s, and I'll fight anyone who dares hurt my son. And your daughter, raised by 2 college professors, and still turned out to be such a shameless slut. Let everyone see what kind of disgrace she is. Aren't you embarrassed? Maybe it was because they feared how crazy she could get. Willow's parents said nothing more. They silently took their daughter and left. Just before they turned away, they gave me a look half filled with disgust, half with pity. I looked past them at Willow, but Willow passed me without saying a word, not even sparing me a glance. My mom was smug about it. She boasted to me they were trying to get me to pay for medical bills. I told them I don't have money, and even if I did, they wouldn't get a cent. I said, go ahead, make a scene. Your daughter's reputation is the one that'll be ruined. Let's see which school will dare accept her after that. I bet on it that these academic types have thin skin, and sure enough, they left with their tails between their legs, didn't even dare ask me for a dime. Then she turned to me and said, all the money I've saved is for your piano lessons. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to compete overseas? If you succeed, no matter how hard or exhausting it is for us, it'll all be worth it. I sat on the piano bench, my back to her. I didn't speak, didn't turn around. The shadow in the corner of the room completely swallowed me. I sat there engulfed in darkness, facing a long future with no light ahead. She didn't hit me this time that the competition was coming soon, and under the spotlight, I couldn't have any visible injuries. But this pain was worse than anything I had felt before. The pain tore through me. Lying in bed that night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. It felt like 1,000 ants were gnawing between my bones. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was Willow's face. In the next room, my mom slept soundly, her breathing deep and even. Willow never came back to school after the incident. The very next day, her mother returned to handle her transfer paperwork. All the students started pointing fingers at me. Willow had been well-known from the day she transferred in beautiful and well-liked. So after she left, some classmates started bullying me. Thumbtacks began to appear in my lunchbox. Glue was smeared across my chair. Bugs turned up in my water bottle. One of the student council members threw my backpack down from an upper floor. Then he and his gang pinned me down. One of them jabbed a finger at my face and shouted, "Son of a bitch, you're the one who ruined Willow." They probably expected me to fight back, but I didn't. I just stood there silently, letting their punches and kicks land on me. What was the point of resisting? Deep down, I truly believed they were right, that it was my fault. I was the one who ruined Willow. It was all because of me. I never should have met her, never should have gone to watch the sunset clouds with her. That wasn't something someone like me was supposed to do. I should have just kept practicing piano. After the others left, I went downstairs alone, picked up my backpack, and under the stares and whispers of my classmates, silently walked to the piano room to practice. My mom was very pleased. She noticed that I had become more focused, that I didn't care about anything except piano. I ate mechanically, studied mechanically, slept mechanically. The only time I showed any life was when I played, and then I played like a madman. She called my dad, thrilled. I finally trained David into what I wanted. There was a long silence on the other end. Finally, my dad said, "Sandra, let's get a divorce." Chapter 8. My dad had an affair with a new intern at his company. Now that his career was back on track, he was being sent to the U.S. on a business trip. Before leaving the country, he came to visit me at school. We sat down in the cafeteria. I felt a bit nervous. Over the years, I'd hardly seen him. My mom always felt that my dad visiting me in Beijing would distract me and interfere with my piano practice, so all these years we had only met a handful of times. Aside from the days when he transferred money to us, we barely spoke, and even when we did talk, the conversation was always cut short by my mom yelling at me to go practice. I knew he was my father, but we weren't close. In a photo I kept, he's holding me up high when I was 3. Back then, he was young and tall. In my memory, that was how he always looked. But now I saw that he had aged, his face lined with wrinkles, gray hairs appearing at his temples. He studied me for a long time, and finally, in a hoarse voice, said, "David, the person I've failed the most is you. You must resent me, don't you?" I shook my head. There was so much I wanted to say, but in the end, I only managed, "Dad, you've worked hard. Go live the life you want." I didn't blame him. I didn't blame him for not fighting for custody. I envied him that he could escape this family, while I kept sinking deeper into the mire, suffocated, and somehow having grown used to it. My father left. I went back to practicing piano. I banged on the keys as hard as I could, using Chopin and Beethoven to drown out the sound of my mom's voice as she talked on the phone in the next room. She called every relative and friend, cursing my dad, cursing him for cheating, for finding a mistress, for abandoning his aging wife, for turning evil once he had money. She said, everything I did was for the child, for this family. She was always like that, always quick to claim credit for anything good, and just as quick to shift the blame for anything bad. She also came to me and bad-mouthed my father. "Remember, it was your dad who didn't want you. So if he ever comes back begging, you better not accept him." I wanted so badly to argue with her. I wanted to ask, "And what about you? When Dad lost his job, how much humiliation did you make him endure? Weren't you also planning to abandon me and remarry back then?" I wanted to say that all these years, it was Dad who worked and supported the family, but when you, Mom, became famous as a successful educator, he stayed quietly in the shadows. I wanted to say that our family falling apart wasn't his fault, it was yours. But in the end, I said nothing. I even nodded and replied, "Got it," then added, "I need to practice," and shut the door. I no longer argued with my mom. There was no point. I had realized that this was a war I could never win. No words I spoke could ever make her confront her own wrongs. So I chose silence to conserve what little of myself was left. The one thing my mom could be glad about was that after I started winning competitions, I began to earn a decent income. So even after the divorce, our family still had money coming in. A variety show director even contacted me, asking if I'd appear on the show. My mom immediately asked if she could come with me. When the answer was no, she was visibly disappointed. I still went, and as a result, I gained a following. They called me the piano maniac, cheering for me on social media. My popularity at school began to improve again. Some girls even wrote me love letters and left them in my desk drawer with chocolate. Among them, there was one underclassman I had a bit of a soft spot for, simply because her smile reminded me of Willow. I asked her, "What do you like about me?" She looked surprised and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe you'd ask me that. You're so amazing that who wouldn't like you?" I didn't say anything. In my mind, I heard Willow's voice again. "It's not because you're excellent that someone will like you." At that moment, I missed Willow so much. But I hadn't seen her in many years. So I went back to practicing piano and let everything else drift away. But somehow, my mom found out about the junior student who liked me. I had already prepared myself, waiting for her to lose her mind again. But this time, her reaction completely caught me off guard. She confirmed the girl's name with me several times, then searched her rare surname online. Finally, she beamed and said, "Just as I thought, she's the daughter of the school's honorary board director." Seeing my blank expression, my mom poked my forehead, annoyed. "You silly boy. Do you even know who that board director is? He's one of those tycoons on the Huruan rich list." She said, "Do you know how many years of struggle you could skip if you managed to win her over? Hurry up, if you get the chance, seal the deal before it slips away." I stared at my mom's mouth opening and closing in front of me, but I couldn't hear a single word she was saying anymore. There was only one voice in my head. What a joke. I used to think, at least I used to believe, that even though she was vain and obsessed with social climbing, she still genuinely wanted me to succeed. But in that moment, I understood clearly and completely. She didn't. It was like time rewound to that night when I was barely 5, curled under the covers, listening to her scream at my dad from the next room. "Take your son and get out, useless piece of trash. Can't even earn a proper living. What the hell did I get out of being with you? You leave early and come back late, and all you bring home is 8,000 yuan a month. You call that being a provider? Let's get divorced that you take the kid. I'm not dragging some dead weight around for the rest of my life." Nothing had ever changed. She never cared about me. She abandoned me because I was a burden. She kept me only because I could benefit her. Everything, every word, every action was just for her own gain. Seeing my indifferent attitude, my mom dressed herself up the next day and went directly to the board director, inviting his family to visit our home. As expected, she was politely turned down. When she got back, she was furious, ranting about how shallow and snobbish they were. But thankfully, she didn't keep pushing the issue. She said, "David, win this for pride if nothing else. When you take the prize at the international competition, all these people who look down on us will eat their words." The competition she spoke of was one of the most prestigious in the field. Everyone in the industry believed I had a real chance at winning it all. My mom was thrilled. Everything was unfolding exactly as she had planned. I asked her, "Have you ever thought about my plan?" She rolled her eyes. "What do you know? What plan could you possibly have?" I fell silent. She was right that I had never had a plan for my own life. That night, I asked myself, if I had the freedom to choose what I really wanted to do, what would I choose? But my mind was blank. I couldn't think of a single answer. All these years, piano had consumed my life. Even if I could choose again, I didn't even know what other choices there were. No doubt maybe there was one answer. I wanted to kill my mom and then kill myself. When that thought entered my mind, I was terrified. But then I realized it was the only answer I had. If I could choose to do anything in this world, that was what I truly wanted. I realized then that my condition had worsened. All these years, I'd relied on medication to keep my emotions stable, but now even the medicine seemed to be losing its effect. I went to see my psychiatrist. After listening to me quietly, she said in a heavy tone, "My advice is that you don't compete in the international competition." Truthfully, I had already heard that same voice in my own mind telling me not to go. That competition was a live bomb, a terrifying catalyst. If I won first place, I would inevitably be propelled to unprecedented heights, and the countdown to my destruction would speed up too. But I couldn't back out. I had to go. Not for my mom, not even for myself, but because on the list of competitors, I saw Willow's name. Chapter 9. It had been so many years since I last saw Willow. Her face had become increasingly blurry in my memory, but her voice, her smile, the way the wind lifted the hem of her skirt, those lived on like an eternal oil painting etched into my heart, never fading. If someone has only ever seen a single beam of light in a long dark tunnel, how could you possibly expect them to forget what light looks like? My mom also saw the list of competitors, but she showed no reaction at all. Time had passed so much that she had completely forgotten Willow. Perhaps even back then, she had never even tried to remember her name. She packed her suitcase, stuffing in several designer gowns she had just bought. She came with me to the competition. There would be interviews after the event, broadcast live by the television station, and she wouldn't miss such a spotlight moment for the world. Before the competition, all participants were checked into the official hotel. My mom found it novel. Once she confirmed it was free, she went off to enjoy the pool and barbecue. With my heart pounding wildly, I waited in the dining hall. Willow would probably come to eat, right? I was about to see her. I was really about to see Willow. Through all those long and hopeless years, I had fallen asleep night after night repeating her name. I checked my reflection in the glass again and again. Were there any wrinkles in my suit? Was my hair tidy? What should I say first when we meet? Just hi, long time no see. Would that sound too distant? I didn't get a chance to finish thinking. Willow appeared. She came in from the door on the other side of the hall. She'd gotten taller. Her white fitted dress hugged her figure gracefully. Sunlight poured through the window, gilding her brows and eyes with gold. It seemed like nothing had changed. She was still the girl in my memory. I walked toward her, heart pounding with excitement, but in the next second I froze. Emma was walking arm in arm with a man. He was gentle, graceful, and charismatic, looking like an American-born Chinese. It was clear he was Emma's boyfriend. Emma saw me. She paused for a split second. The man beside her must have noticed her hesitation and stopped walking too. Together they looked over at me. After a few seconds, Emma averted her gaze as if she hadn't seen anything at all. She tugged gently on the man's sleeve and walked away with him to the side. I stood there, sunlight pouring over me, but I had never felt so cold. After a moment of dazed stillness, I turned and followed them like I was possessed. I didn't want much. I had come to this competition because of her. I never expected her to still like me. I just wanted to say a few things. I wanted to ask if her hearing had recovered. I wanted to say I was sorry. More than anything, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for lighting up my life. You have no idea how much you meant to me. If not for you, I might have died a long time ago. I wouldn't have made it through all these years. But I never got to say any of that because I heard Emma talking with her boyfriend. The man asked her in English, "That's David, right? The piano prodigy from the China region. Do you know him?" Emma pressed her lips together, silent. The man laughed. "Oh, now I remember. You two went to the same school, right? Did you have a crush on him?" Emma finally spoke. "No, I didn't." The man teased. "Really? You don't look like that's the truth. But still, he's impressive. Liking him would have been totally understandable." Emma bit her lip. "He isn't. He's very talented, yes, but he's a monster. He grew up in a horribly dysfunctional family." The man stopped joking, with a tone of pity and superiority. He sighed. "I see ya. People from broken homes that they don't know how to love or be loved." Emma nodded and said, "Yeah, once you really spend time with someone like that, you'll see they're unbearable." I stood there listening to my verdict, my mind operating on autopilot. And somewhere in the haze, I remembered a conversation from years ago. Emma and I were chatting beneath the fiery sunset clouds, and she had said, "It feels like boys turn out more like their moms and girls more like their dads." I forgot how I responded to that back then, but right now, it felt like I had fallen into a pit of ice. So this is how it is. I didn't blame Emma for what she said about me. She probably saw the truth about me through what my mom had done, and that means everything she said was right. No one could love me. No one could endure me. This so-called piano prodigy, the mad genius David, was just a shell, and inside that shell flowed the same dark, viscous, disgusting liquid as Sandra. Emma and her boyfriend turned their heads and saw me not far away. For a brief moment, I saw her freeze. She opened her mouth slightly as if to say something, but I turned and walked away. It didn't matter anymore. None of it mattered anymore. I went back to the hotel and looked at Sandra lying on the bed. She was smiling in her sleep, clearly having a pleasant dream. I looked at her closely. That we really did look alike. Eyes, nose, mouth, the shape of our faces. Sometimes the way I spoke sounded like her. Sometimes the way I thought felt like her. And with that realization, a despair I had never known wrapped itself around me. There would be no hope, not in this life. Even if Sandra died one day, the parts of her that lived in me would remain forever. Only a final ending could set me free. I looked at the fruit knife in the fruit tray. My hand slowly reached out and gripped the handle. "Kill her," I said in my heart. "Kill her, then kill myself." I walked toward Sandra. She was completely unaware. The curtains fluttered with the wind, and the rustling of leaves outside sounded like the sonata of my fate. The fruit knife slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. The prelude to murder came to an abrupt halt. I crouched down, hugging my head, trembling violently. No, this wasn't the revenge I wanted. If she died now, she would die at her happiest, well-fed, well-dressed, rich and respected. Her son was about to win first prize at an international competition. Everyone believed she was a model mother, a brilliant educator, a life so radiant and glorious. I wasn't going to give her that ending. I put the fruit knife back in the tray. I lifted the piano lid and started to play. In the flow of music, Sandra turned over in her sleep and murmured something. She was probably rehearsing her speech for the day I won the competition. I smiled. My fingers danced across the black and white keys with precision and strength. So be it. Let the music swell into its climax. Let us together welcome that grand, magnificent destruction. Chapter 10. The days that followed were quiet. I kept to myself, ate alone in the dining hall, returned to practice piano, and didn't make friends with anyone. But one day, a man sat down across from me. It was Emma's boyfriend. His name was George. In clumsy Mandarin, George apologized to me. He said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Chan. What we said the other day probably hurt you, and for that, I sincerely apologize." In that moment, I almost laughed. I set down my fork and looked at George across the table. He radiated a natural, effortless confidence, clearly someone from a wealthy background, a second-generation rich kid. The guy was surprisingly blunt. Usually, when someone says something behind your back and gets caught, they'll just pretend it never happened. Even if they feel guilty, most would rather avoid confrontation. But George had gone out of his way to apologize. I asked, "Do you really feel sorry?" He nodded heavily, then continued to confess in Chinese. "Really, I say true. I was because I detective Emma maybe before like you, so I speak crazy words. Actually, I always respect you much. I often watch your little video." I smiled and said, "Then do me a favor. He asked, "What kind of favor?" I said, "Invite me over to your house." Chapter 11. The last few days flew by in no time. The international competition was tomorrow. That night, I had a rare dinner with my mom. She wasn't happy about it. She complained I was wasting her time. She was still debating whether to open her speech in Chinese or English, and if it was in English, she'd have to memorize it a few more times. I watched her silently as she revised her speech. After a long while, I spoke in a low voice, "Mom." She was carefully spelling out the word educate, and, without looking up, she snorted impatiently through her nose. "What?" I asked. "Do you think you owe me an apology?" She looked up abruptly, frowning deeply. She was about to lose her temper, I could tell. But I repeated myself. "Do you think over the course of my entire childhood, you owe me an apology?" She slammed her hand on the table. The fork and plate bounced and clattered back down. The loud crash drew stares from nearby foreigners. She shouted hysterically, "An apology? I raised you with all my blood, sweat, and tears. You have everything now, and you think I owe you an apology?" I silently shoved the last bite of food into my mouth, stood up, and left. She didn't follow me. Maybe it was because the competition was tomorrow, and she didn't want to push me too far today. Back in my room, I pulled open the drawer. Inside, a gun lay quietly. I had stolen it that afternoon from George's father's study while visiting their home. Maybe by tomorrow, they'll discover the gun is missing, but it doesn't matter. By then, everything will already be over. Chapter 12. My performance was scheduled for 9 a.m. the next morning. At 6:30 in the morning, my mom got up buzzing with excitement. She put on her dress and earrings. At 6:50, she came to my room to knock on the door and remind me to get up, but I was already gone. At exactly 7 o'clock, I arrived at a nearby street I had scoped out earlier. From there, it was a 15-minute walk to the concert hall, and from the front entrance to the backstage area, it took another 3 minutes. At 7:10, I walked into a convenience store. It was a winter morning, and the sky wasn't fully bright yet. The street was empty, and inside the shop, the only clerk on duty was dozing off. I bought a bottle of hot juice. At 7:20, I finished the juice, wandering the street with my hands in my pockets, fingering the gun hidden in my coat. I had learned how to use it during military training, and during my visit to George's house, I had casually confirmed its operation with his father. At 7:40, my mom was frantically looking for me. She kept calling my phone. I turned it off. At 8 o'clock, I went back into the same convenience store. The clerk had changed. Now sitting behind the register was a young Chinese guy, probably the owner's son. As soon as he saw me, he said, "Dude, you're dressed so formally. Got some kind of big event coming up?" I smiled and said, "Yeah, I'm going to a piano competition." He looked at me with envy and said, "Man, you're really something. Not like me. I came here and ended up stuck working at this store. Couldn't even get into a decent school. Feels like I'm wasting my life." I was silent for a moment. Then I said, "Someone once told me something really important. That person's no longer in my life, but I've never forgotten what she said." Softly, I said, "She told me you don't have to be excellent to be loved." He nodded slowly and said, "My parents told me that too." He was so lucky. I took a deep breath and glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 8:30. Time. I raised my hand and pulled the gun out of my coat. I told him, "Turn around, hands on your head." His eyes widened in terror. He began to tremble. I said calmly, "Just do as I say." Then I fired a shot at the shelf beside me. The recoil numbed my wrist. The sound of the gunfire shattered the silence of the winter morning, and in that moment, it felt like something inside my chest had ripped open, forcing its way out from the roots of my heart. 2 more shots. The shelves crashed to the floor with a thunderous noise. Glass shattered, scattering shards everywhere. The clerk was stunned. He turned around, hands over his head, trembling violently. He said, "All the money's in the register." He thought I was robbing the place, and I was. I looked around the convenience store. Finally, I picked up a pack of chewing gum. As I left with that pack of gum, the clerk, somehow finding the courage, called out to me, "Wait. I remember you. Aren't you the piano prodigy?" I smiled, popped a piece of gum into my mouth, then tossed the gun to him. I said, "Can you do me a favor?" The gum thief asked softly, "Call the police in 15 minutes. At 8:40, I strode quickly toward the auditorium. A few scattered passers-by walked past me, whispering fearfully about something. I guess they'd heard the gunshot. At 8:55, I arrived at the auditorium and headed straight backstage. My mom was waiting there. She was dressed in a custom-made evening gown, holding the speech she'd polished for so long. The moment she saw me, she rushed up and asked, "Where have you been?" I didn't answer her. At that moment, the clock struck 9. The host announced my name. I stepped out from behind the curtain and sat down at the piano. Silence fell. The auditorium was huge, the domed ceiling looming above. Countless audience members and judges sat below, with dozens of high-definition cameras surrounding the stage. It was said that several contestants before me had choked from nerves and underperformed terribly, but not me. I felt an unprecedented calm. I raised my hands and let my fingers fall heavily on the black and white keys. This was my final piece, my swan song, a curtain call of my long life. After the first bar, I saw the judges' expressions change. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my mother jumping backstage, apparently yelling furiously. I knew exactly what shocked them. The piece I was playing was completely different from what the host had just announced. I was playing La Campanella, one of the top 10 most difficult piano pieces. It wasn't my competition piece. In previous practice sessions, I had always struggled with it. Suddenly switching pieces now, in my mother's eyes, meant I had ruined all her years of effort. But I didn't care. The judges and audience faded from my world. In the stillness, it was just me and the piano. I knew it better than I knew my own body. It gave me glory, it gave me pain. I loved it, and I hated it. And this piece thought this was our final goodbye. The performance ended. Silence. I exhaled deeply and rose to bow. Moments later, the auditorium erupted in thunderous applause. An almost perfect performance. The judges began scoring. When the host announced the score, my mother rushed onto the stage, overwhelmed with excitement, grabbing my hand. She exclaimed, my son is number 1. Undoubtedly first place. I had been the last contestant, and my score was significantly higher than the others. A clean lead. I turned my head and looked at my mother's face, distorted with excitement. She pulled out her speech, one she'd prepared long ago. Sure enough, reporters surrounded us. She stood in the middle, basking in attention, reciting the opening line, "I'm proud of my son, David Chon." Then she gazed at me with motherly affection. It looked like the ending of a Hollywood family film. The son achieves his dream, and the mother beams with pride. A reporter held a microphone to my face. "Is there anything you'd like to say to your mother?" Under my mother's hopeful gaze, in front of tens of thousands of spectators, I smiled and coldly said, "She's a murderer." My mother's face instantly changed. I said no more because in the next second, the doors of the auditorium swung open. Police entered and walked straight to me. My smile grew brighter. For once, heaven had helped me. Every moment had aligned perfectly. The entire venue was in shock. Reporters, thrilled by the spectacle, raised their cameras toward me. Many began questioning my mother. "Ma'am, what crime did your son commit? Why is he being taken away by the police? He just said you're a murderer. What does he mean?" My mother stood there, mouth agape, unable to say a word. It wasn't supposed to be like this. This was supposed to be the most glorious moment of her life. She had prepared that speech for so long. She was supposed to be interviewed, broadcast across the country. Everyone would talk about her great motherly dedication. She'd be on TV sharing her parenting success, admired by all. But why? Why had it turned out like this? Chapter 13. Mother, dear mother. The world is cruel like this. Because we are bound by blood. You were able to use raising me as a way to complete yourself, and I could only destroy myself in order to destroy you. Chapter 14. My mother's world began to collapse on that day. The news of me being taken away by the police right after winning the championship exploded like a bomb. Every media outlet was reporting on it. Every keyword associated with me was headlined. Grabbing together. Genius, criminal, success, failure, glory, ruin. My mother got the fame she had always dreamed of, just not in the way she expected. All these years, she had tightly bound herself to me. Wherever my accomplishments were mentioned, she made sure to insert herself and boast loudly. So when I fell, it was inevitable that all eyes turned to her too. What's more, I was still legally underage when arrested, clearly classifying me as a juvenile offender. So the topic of parenting couldn't be avoided. A wave of viral think pieces emerged on public accounts on social media. Influencers wrote lengthy posts analyzing our relationship as a textbook case of symbiotic strangulation in psychology. They wrote that symbiotic strangulation refers to a relationship where only one person's will and needs are allowed to exist, and the other is reduced to a tool for fulfilling that dominant demand. Looking at Sandra's life path, it's easy to see that she's always resented her fate. She considered herself excellent, but married someone far below her expectations. At first, she pinned all her hopes on him, but reality quickly disappointed her. Criticism and blame became the main tune of their daily life. And when Wynette Mann's career finally began to recover, he unsurprisingly cheated on her and left without a second thought. All the resentment, frustration, and bitterness she had accumulated over the years were ultimately poured into her last remaining gamble, her son, David. What David did was a long-suppressed eruption aimed at shattering the prison that confined him. Soon, more revelations surfaced. Our school's nurse came forward and testified that I had been diagnosed with depression when I was barely 10 years old. Public opinion exploded again. It was obvious that over the years, my condition hadn't improved, it had only worsened. As my legal guardian, Sandra's role in that outcome was self-evident. Old newspapers from over a decade ago were dug up. The headline now horrifying in retrospect. A genius boy forged by 600 slaps. Public sentiment had completely shifted since then. People now said, geniuses are born, not beaten into existence by 600 slaps. But 600 slaps are enough to completely destroy an ordinary child. While in confinement, I was also interviewed by reporters. They asked, "Why did you say your mother is a murderer? Do you mean she murdered your life? Do you hate her? If you had a second chance, would you choose to be just an ordinary person?" I stared out the window at the clouds. The sun was setting. I was only 17, and yet I had already experienced both the peaks and the valleys of life. In the end, I answered none of their questions. I was tired, exhausted. The doctor gave me a shot of sedative, and I collapsed into the pillow, sinking into a deep, dark sleep. Chapter 15. In the autumn of the following year, I returned to the country. Before returning, I went to see my father. He was playing with my younger half-brother, his child with another woman, on the lawn in the courtyard. I watched them quietly for a moment, left a gift, and left without meeting him. Since he had already begun a new life, let him say a clean, thorough goodbye to everything from the past. Besides that, Emma had tried to reach out to me as well. I watched the media interview with her and George. In the video, George sighed. He said he didn't blame me for stealing the gun, only that he thought I was truly pitiful. And Emma cried after a long bout of choking sobs. She said, "Maybe I could have talked to him. Maybe we could have pulled him back. They really were good people, but I no longer needed anyone to pull me back." After returning home, I went to see my mom. She had suffered a devastating blow. Her life had lost all hope. In our hometown, where she had once hoped to return in glory, now everyone either cursed her or laughed at her. Her hair had turned completely white overnight. In the dead of winter, she had gone out and been struck by a car on an icy road. When I visited her, she sat in a wheelchair. Her face was deeply sunken. She looked 20 years older than she had just 1 year ago. The moment she saw me, she erupted into a stream of curses. I crouched down in front of her, looking at this frail old woman. In that instant, I was no longer afraid of her. This was my final revenge. I looked into her eyes and calmly said, "Mom, look at me now. I have nothing left, only a criminal record, long-term reliance on medication, and no survival skills. I'm a complete failure. Your 20 years of effort? All ruined, just like that. And you're a total failure too. The biggest mistake of your life was giving birth to me. No one will ever want to be with you again. I won't come to see you anymore. From now on, your life will be confined to that wheelchair. Oh, and I spoke to the nurse at the front desk. They'll let you watch more television. You'll see how our story is played over and over again as a cautionary tale." I left the hospital. My mother screamed behind me in despair. She knew I would never return. Only someone who truly despised another to the core would destroy both their own future and the others. And now she was old and had nothing. In the end, I heard her mutter, "I was too soft-hearted. I should have divorced him back then and kicked both of you out with nothing." I didn't look back. Let her live in that regret. Let it torment her for the rest of her life. But I was wrong. There would be no rest of her life. 3 days after I left, my mother, having lost all hope, went to the rooftop and did what I had wanted to do more than 10 years ago, but ultimately never did. Chapter 16. I didn't know about her death because at that very moment, I was also standing on the top floor of a school building. The sunset poured down like blood, and I knew this time, Emma wouldn't be there to save me. One leg had already stepped over the railing. The building was still just as tall. The wind blew past, everything felt so empty. There was nothing left for me to hold on to. The only thing I had wanted to destroy my mother and then destroy myself that was already done. MSI? All those people who had once brought me fleeting warmth had now left me, each beginning their own new life. And I had been broken inside and out. I no longer wanted to be a burden to anyone. My other leg crossed over the railing. Suddenly, a little boy's voice came from behind me. Don't do it. I turned around and looked at him. He was maybe 5 years old, with a close-cropped haircut, looking at me timidly. He said again, don't do it. He walked closer and reached out his hand. You have to stay alive. I said, don't come any closer. The edge of the rooftop is dangerous, and I'm afraid you might fall. But it was like he didn't hear me. He kept walking toward me, still saying, you have to stay alive. I didn't want him to get closer, so I had no choice but to climb back over the railing. As my feet landed back on the rooftop, I saw him smile. That's more like it, he said in his clear, childish voice. I held his hand and led him to a safer spot. Why are you here alone? Where are your parents? He looked down, a sad expression on his small face. Mom wants to divorce Dad. She doesn't want me anymore. I was really sad, but I told myself it's okay. The TV said life is really long. Even if my mom and dad don't love me, maybe when I grow up, someone else will. Oh, and my music teacher really likes me. She's teaching me to play the piano, and she says I'm a genius. I froze. Suddenly, something clicked. When I turned to look again, the little boy was gone. There was no one by my side, only the gentle wind brushing past me. No little boy. What I had seen was myself at 5 years old. I broke down and cried. I wept with all my strength. So this is what it meant. After everyone had left me, the one who saved me in the end was me. I looked up. The clouds on the horizon were bathed in the glow of sunset, shining like molten gold. Many years ago, a girl had said to me beneath skies painted by burning clouds, there's more to life than piano, like having a good dinner, taking a hot bath, watching a movie with someone you love, going ice skating, watching the sunset and sunrise. That girl was no longer mine. But these skies of flaming clouds, they were still mine. I walked down from the rooftop. I would go have a delicious dinner. I would take a hot bath. I would watch a movie. Life is still long. Maybe, just maybe, I'll meet someone I love.